Hey guys, today we're following up with Nicole Brewster from Renforth Resources. It's been a while since we've seen Nicole, it's been a while since we've heard from her, but the company has been issuing press releases, and today we're following up on the recent press release, and we're also finding out where's Nicole and what's she doing. So stay tuned, watch the video, and have a good time. Learn how to invest from the best, from the CEOs themselves. All right, Nicole, it's been a while since we've had you on Zoom, and you're in London.
I'm in London.
What are you doing in London?
I attended the Minds and Money Connect show. It's an investors slash industry show, and once I got here, it's sort of like baby PDAC actually. So it's kind of
Oh,
cool, issuers, investors, funds, bigger mining companies, lots of neat attendees.
that's pretty good. And as you mentioned, it's baby PDAC. What's the main reason for a company like yours to attend one of these events? Is it to meet new investors, get the stories out, or maybe talk to a bigger company to see if they're interested in
Both,
what you're doing? Both, eh? Okay.
both. I'm marketing, so it's frustrating because there's no measurable deliverables. You know that if you don't market, nothing will happen, right?
That's it.
Um, so I talked while I'm here. I talked to a couple high net worth people. I talked to a couple people that I talked to in May. One of whom told me he is a shareholder now, so that's good. That's at least a little bit of feedback that May was worth doing. And he likes the plans. He likes what we're doing going forward. So that's positive too. I did talk to a couple mining companies. It's the first time I've been able to get those meetings. It was the first two meetings I had. Um, and they're talking to me because of Suramo. I mean, let me be clear. Suramo needs more work. We're at the very, very beginning with Suramo. But if Suramo continues to deliver the way it has or better, that's a really interesting asset. It's a totally new story that nobody knows anything about. So they want to hear about it. They want to kind of toss their hat in the ring. Both fellows were like, when you're talking to us, you talk to me and I will kind of be so from the point of view of just getting a face, a business card, that actually is worth the trip, frankly.
That's it. I would imagine you meeting them, talking to them in person, having them being able to know that you're accessible, reachable. I mean, probably makes a big difference, especially like you mentioned in the marketing point of view of it.
Well, and getting them to agree to follow what we're doing. There's no ask today with these guys, but you're right. It's meet them, face to the name, touch point, and get them to watch what we're doing as we go forwards.
So it's always it seems to be both. You're trying to find a possible suitor that'll look at your company and want to participate, and you're trying to find the investors that'll follow the story and be there along for the ride as you're trying to attract the bigger company. It's
Right.
it you
Well,
have to
it's
do
marketing.
both. Yeah, both
It's
all the
marketing.
time.
I'm selling the company to different people for different reasons. Everybody brings their own understanding of what's going on, their own sophistication to the table, and their own personal needs and wants. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody wants to make money.
That's it.
That's universal. But what that means to different people and how different people make their money, it's a big world, and there's a lot of ways to play the game. So I have to tailor what I'm saying to whom I'm speaking to. So when I talk to like you, I'm talking to a retail investor or anybody who might be listening, who I presume is a retail investor, shareholder or not. So I have to talk about certain things in certain ways. But when I talk to a industry people, we'll say it that way, I have to talk differently. When I talk to analysts who are usually geologists, I have to talk differently. If I talk to funds and I'm talking to the financial people, I have to present something different to them because there's a lot to say and there's a lot to cover and there is a lot of information, but nobody wants to hear it all, frankly. Um, so you try to be succinct and deliver what they're looking for. At the end of the day, we're all looking for the drill to deliver. Drill's turning right now, so more news later.
Well, that's what I saw. You guys issued a press release on November 28th, and some of it's technical, so I thought we'd maybe look that over today because I saw that you guys actually you hit three drill holes and you did some
Those are the
surface
channels.
sampling. Yeah.
Those were the channels. So the three channels, which are fundamentally flat drill holes on surface, right? Like they're linear. Um, The channels all delivered numbers, which is good. And then we drilled under them. And visually, we intersected what we saw on surface in the drill holes. But of course, it has to go for assay. Can't speak to grade or anything, except to say, the mineralization's there, which is in and of itself is exciting and positive. How is it there? Specifically, how much is there? We'll find that out when it comes back from assay. So,
Constantly
but
adding
yeah,
value.
well, this is it, right? Don't forget, we're drilling at Lalonde. We've not drilled Lalonde before. We're following up on, we prospected early in the year. Then we did some channels on our own, just in the bush with hand clearing. Then we did the bigger stripping area. Then we cut channels in that and sent them for assays. So it's a bit of work done at Lalonde, but we're just drilling under the access points we have due to the channeling. And right now, actually, we're drilling on an angle to get under the road. And then we'll take all of this data away. It'll all go to the labs, and we'll get our results into the new year. And then we'll plan another drill campaign that, maybe late February. I'm guessing, though, it could be March, it could be May. It'll be what it is ultimately, but we'll do another round of drilling at Surimo, because once we're done here at Lalonde, the current hole, maybe one more hole, we'll go down to Victoria, 4 kilometers south, and we'll step back from the previous drilling we did in order to hit, because if you recall, our previous drilling and stripping was only on the southern shoulder of the magnetic. Well,
That's
actually,
it.
the magnetic anomaly has split at most of Victoria. So now we have two anomalies. We don't have one. So we only got the southern anomaly of Victoria. We have to step back further to the north and drill to the south in order to get that northern and the southern anomaly. If we intend to drill all the way to the southern anomaly, I'm not entirely convinced the geologists intend to drill all the way to the southern anomaly, to tell you the truth, but we want to see the northern one. So we'll do some holes at Victoria, and then yeah, we'll be close to Christmas by then.
I noticed that you guys are working often, and then you just mentioned that the drills are turning today.
Yeah. Today we're on the sixth hole at Lalonde right now. It's more than 1,000 meters, but actually I didn't look at the meterage last night, so I can't tell you exactly how many meters it is.
Exciting. And when you're doing all this work and you're issuing these news releases, that gives you fuel when you're going to, like you are at in London at Mines of Money, and these results, they actually make the difference when you're talking to these bigger companies, or
They
what are
do
they
and they
looking
don't.
for?
More information. I mean, we know we have the mineralization. So that gets me conversations that we wouldn't have gotten before, because we know we have large scale mineralization. What's the grade? We don't know yet. We haven't done enough drilling. We know what the worst grade is, the grade we have right now, but there's every chance that that could get better with some work, because we've seen higher grade material. I mean, ultimately, they want to see a resource, but we're quite a ways from putting a resource together. So we've got lots of drilling to do before we do that. At this point, drill holes could change everything, right? It's going to come down to grade. It's going to come down to what do we see. The neat thing is, before I left and before we started drilling, all the geologists met with Dr. Franklin, who's looking for the VMS he feels is in the property and hidden. So if we get enough data that he can start to work a bit more effectively and vector in on the VMS, because what he does is data driven. He analyzes the geochemistry for the unique geochemical signature of a VMS based on his long and very qualified expertise. So he needs more data, so we drill. And then as we get more data and feed him, he may start to have his own ideas as well and targets in terms of chasing a VMS, which is blind. You won't see it. You just have to vector in on it with a drill hole. So if we start to uncover that story, then that's a totally different facet to Surimo.
So what's the plan for the coming year? Do you have an idea? Or is that why you're having that your investor meeting,
Oh
your
no, I
board
mean
meeting
there
next week?
there is an idea. We raised money last month. We're into December now. I suddenly realized that halfway through a conversation today. We raised money last month. We'll spend approximately half of it drilling prior to Christmas, and we'll spend the balance later, well, in the new year, probably towards the end of, right around the end of Q3 of the first quarter would be my guess. We'll start. Um, we did a few things that don't merit press releases. One was we took the geophysics, we flew the detail mag and the EM, and the EM is kind of like a roadmap to surface sulfide mineralization or when we find surface. We had that analyzed by a geophysicist who's come up with a list of anomalies for us. He
Wow.
didn't prioritize them. He's given us verbally his favorites. Very good geophysicist. I've known him for a long time, and he's good at what he does. So now we're focused solely on the western half of the property. So from the road, the Rapid 7 road to the west. And we have anomalies over the whole property. It's a number slightly over 20, I think, of anomalies he outlined. But we told him we're only working on the west side of the property. So we're going to just start drilling off his anomalies, really. We're using one of the map products he delivered, which was in the press release. And it's proven to be accurate. So that tells us we can keep using it going forwards. And we'll drill those targets off. Try to look for better numbers. It's that simple.
Well, it seems promising, and it's good to know that you guys have a plan. Well, obviously, you always have a plan. Ever since the summer, or I would say even beginning the summer, the market's been getting hit. Commodities have been getting hit very hard. But as the Fed seems, or at least central banks are looking at ease raising hikes, we're seeing commodities pick up. And we're suddenly also seeing Canadian, or at least the Canadian government, trying to kick out Chinese investors. And now suddenly American investors, or even the U.S. Army, seems to be interested in projects in Canada, projects in Quebec. Uh, Last week at Quebec Min, there was actually a group of U.S. Army delegates that were there. So the sector, even though it's been getting hit hard since the summer, it's garnering a lot of attention.
Governments are paying attention. You're starting to see resource nationalization creep into the market. You're also starting to see auto manufacturers moving into the battery space and or build their own battery factories. They're going to need to supply those with metals. So the vertical integration in the auto space is starting. Will we see the stainless steel manufacturers get involved as a reflex to protect their supply of nickel? Questionable. We're seeing economic pressures, though, start to come to bear. It was today announced that the planned British Volt battery factory for Quebec is not going to be. British Volt is struggling economically to sustain their British battery factory, so they're not going to pursue any additional ones. I'm a little dubious that the Fed is predictable yet. I don't think they're done, unfortunately. I think they might be taking a breather and stepping it down slightly, but I don't think the Fed is out of the mix. But eventually the market will get used to that volatility and stop second guessing it. I mean, we're seeing Bitcoin exchanges are coming undone. What's the contagion factor of all of that capital leaving the market going to be? There's a lot of pressures. There's a lot of outside things going on. But what I do know is mining is completely the exploration side of mining at least has been completely underappreciated for so long that there's pressure building within the space because the exploration is needed and it needs the capital to flow into it. And I think we're going to see the capital flows in. I think you're going to start to see the generalist investors come in. By the same token, everyone I spoke to here were mining funds, but there's a lot of mining funds in Europe. It's kind of interesting. I don't think the US is going to satisfy their own need for metals on their own ground. I think we're going to see the US come into Canada more aggressively, but not necessarily the US military, instead, just US companies or companies that have assets they can't make work unless they're in, for example, Nevada, come into Canada as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting year coming up for a whole bunch of reasons. And then there are, of course, the negative reasons. Mr. Putin is just not stopping, is he? He's
Nope.
cracking down on his own citizenry now. China is getting worse, not better. Even if they do relax some of their COVID-ish controls, personal freedom in China is a thing of the past. So, unfortunately, though, mining does well when everything else kind of goes to hell, right? So,
Well, yeah, we've been seeing. Well, I've been noticing that the sectors have been getting a little bit hotter. Nickel is bouncing back. Gold has been swinging back
oh,
up. I mean,
I
so
had
so
I had somebody say to me, "Well, nickel stocks with the price of nickel," and all I had was a flashback to gold. Where the price of gold, even where it is, and one of the guys, one of the pitch battles, got up and said, or one of the presentations that I could hear, got up and said, like, the people that worry about the price of gold every day don't, because the margins for the producers are huge and they're making
that's it.
money hand over fist. There's no need to worry about the commodity price. And I would argue, I mean, nickel's for sure the same thing. Look at the price of nickel. There was a time when when copper was a multiple of nickel, and now nickel's a multiple of copper.
That's it.
So the daily fluctuations, the volatility in the price. I mean, volatility is the name of the game. Everything is done with a discount to prices, to price assumptions.
Well, and I think you'll resonate this message as well. But commodities, metals, it's a long term play, especially once you know the global outlook for the future. You need these minerals, you need these metals, you need to make progress. Technology is going to keep moving forward, and as we're moving forward, I mean, we're gonna have to build more things. So these metals aren't going away. The need is definitely not going away. So I can't see why the market's not going to be favorable, or at least the tides aren't going to turn eventually. But I think, like you mentioned, 2023 is going to be an exciting year. We're going to see certain things come about.
Oh, for sure. And everyone I'm talking to here, their investment horizon is 3 to 5 years. It's not like at home where the investment horizon is next week or, next day. This is sophisticated money that, as you say, is reading the macro. They're reading the global outlooks. There's a lot of smart thinking on what's happening on a global basis. And they're saying this is where we want to be because we feel we know what the world's going to look like in 3 to 5 years. And it's going to be a place that needs a lot of metal for both growth and then the whole new paradigm, which is energy storage or whatever you want to call it, a green revolution, whatever it is you want to call it. It places a stress on a market or an environment, the metals environment, that was kind of in stasis, right? There was more or less enough production to meet demand. There wasn't huge overages either way. There wasn't huge excess production, nor was there huge excess demand until all of a sudden batteries are on the table.
That's it.
And that's completely new.
Now,
Uh,
Nicole, because we've been telling our pretty much our viewers a little bit more about private placements and how to get into, or at least how to enter a stock with more volume, especially if they're accredited. Could you maybe just, because we're trying to reinforce that message that if you're accredited, you can participate in these private placements, and it does make sense because you can actually get a larger chunk of shares, probably get a warrant or something that'll be an added value, but at the same time, you're coming into the market without disrupting the market that'll change your overall buy price if you're getting in. Why is it interesting for them to get into your stock at that when you have these private placements?
well, it's interesting because they'll get a warrant of some sort frequently, not always, depends on the terms. It's interesting because sometimes, and again, not always, the stock can be up to a 20% discount to the 21-day
Ah,
trading price of the stock, but not always. It's interesting because the money that goes into a private placement goes into the treasury of the company and can be used to advance the project. You buy shares on the market, you're just buying them from another guy or girl. You're not buying them from the company. So it doesn't affect the company's treasury. But by the same token, companies do appreciate the support of buying in the market. So both have their purpose. The trick is access to these deals. A lot of companies just go straight to brokers who put it into institutions. It's not retail investors. Renforth's a little different. I do it retail because I do the work myself. So, you got to watch. If you've got a company you like, you got to watch for the press release. And if you see the company press release that they're going to raise money, you have to pick up the phone or send that email and say, can I participate? That's the purpose of the press release going out. give everyone the same opportunity, but you have to put your hand up and, try and step into the ring. So it can be good. It's not necessarily the only way to do things. And by the same token, judicious buying over time can achieve good pricing as well, because prices fluctuate. I mean, a private placement done at the height of the share price, with or without a discount, is still not going to do you any better than had you been watching the stock and buying it when it was down.
So a mix
But
of
then,
both,
then you
probably.
gotta, yeah, you gotta be a contrarian, right? So
That's it. That's true. Being a contrarian makes a lot of sense. And but the reason why we've been mentioning it to our viewers is because yes, you can buy in the market, but because sometimes you can find that discount, you could get that warrant. It sort of gives you an elegant way to follow that company, to buy directly from the treasury, like you mentioned, which is great, which is something that even we haven't mentioned. That it's good to actually be buying from the company direct those shares that's actually going to be issuing it on the work. Both serve a purpose, but no, I like the way you put it. It makes a lot of sense, and I think investors need to be mindful of that. That when they're participating in a private placement, they're actually putting their money to use. Well, actually,
yeah, but you have
that's
to
it.
meet the criteria. I mean, I think the current accredited investor criteria, and I could be slightly wrong, is yourself with you and a spouse, net assets of over $5 million, excluding your dwelling, an individual net assets over 1 million, excluding the dwelling, like liquid assets. Um, Income is either 200 or 250,000 per year for the last 2 years.
That's it.
So it's a that's a you and you've got a warrant, like you've got to sign that that's real and be prepared that somebody might come and try to determine that someday, right? So it's a tricky bucket to get yourself into as well. So you can do, yes, private placement can be good, but if you want to get into a company and you like a company and you've been watching the company, you can probably also find the places where the shares are well priced and
That's
just buy
true.
them in the market. And usually you won't get you'll get a better price in the market. For example, the financing I just closed, the hard dollar was at 3.5 cents. And sure, they got a warrant, and what was it? It was at 6 or 7 cents for 24 months, maybe. I can't even remember, unfortunately, off the top of my head. However, so they paid a premium for the shares and the warrant. They could have bought the stock at the same time as low as 2.5 cents in the market.
Yeah, but the
And I mean,
markets
a
aren't.
warrant, a warrant is has no value. A warrant's value is only that it gives you a right to purchase shares, which means you still have to come up with the money in the allocated timeline. So if the shares go up, sure, you've got to write a check and then get those shares in return. So, you know, you for it, there's no magic formula. Everybody really has to sit down and look at their own circumstances and what works for them. Because maybe you don't want to write another check. Maybe you went in on the private placement, but if you've got the right to buy 100,000 shares at 6 cents for 24 months, you have to be prepared to write that check to buy those 100,000 shares. To each their own. There's no magic formula.
But it's good to have those choices, and I think it's a blend of both could probably be best. But you mentioned it before. The most important thing is to watch those press releases.
Well, yeah, if you're trying to figure out what companies are financing, for sure. You got to watch the press releases. You got to do the work.
Well, I think that's something that's very underrated as well. People think that they can just buy shares in a company and just follow it by watching the stock, but you got to read the press releases. You got to see if they're coming out with news, if they're coming out with private placements, because that'll move the needle as well.
There are so many different kinds of investors. There are the guys who buy the stock because they read about it in a chat room or they got advice from their dentist or a guy in a bar. Those are not informed investors and they're just tippers. Um, then there are the people that are actually investing their retirement funds or their risk portion of their financial assets. And they're doing their due diligence and they're reading the company's press releases and they're sending me an email and saying what's going on. Usually those people are exposed to the mining business in some way, so they understand to a degree what's happening anyway and the rationale about what to expect in the future.
it takes a bunch of investors to. I mean, like you said, everyone's different, and everyone has a right to participate in the market. But it's good because you need all those types of investors. The good, the bad. They move your stock. They help the market cap. But at the
Well,
same time, they offer support when
yeah,
sometimes when you
no, I'm
need it.
not fussed. Don't get me wrong, I'm not fussed
No, I
about what
agree.
kind of investor. It's just it's hard to paint the industry with one brush. I can't give financial advice. I can't tell you what to do. I'm actually specifically not allowed to do that. I'm not a registrant. I'm not licensed. I was once upon a time, but not anymore. I have to be careful because there's rules around what I do. But, people can find advice and they've got to just sit down and free advice is worth exactly what you pay for it too, right?
That's it.
You got to take it all in and then evaluate it yourself. Um, if you're looking for someone to tell you what to do, you can always go to your bank and they'll tell you to buy mutual funds. And don't get me started on why that's a horrible idea. But to each their own, right?
No, you're right. To each their own. But on that, you have an exciting project here. You have
Yeah, I
well,
got
you've
a
been
drill turning. Turn, baby, turn.
well, that's it, and you've been working on this, especially on the Sermo project, for the better part of 2 years now. It's
Surimo
been
was West Malartic or Malartic West. I forget which one I called it. At the end of 2020, I started staking the claims and I staked them into 2021. We went in the field, we prospected, we saw the old trenches, then we drilled off the 2.2 kilometers. Then we stripped in between two fences of drill holes. Then we drilled under the stripping. Then we flew the detailed geophysics. Then we were out this year because Lalonde looked interesting. We were out this year. We prospected, we channeled, we trenched, we channeled. Now we're drilling. We've got the geophysics interped now. We've got some interesting targets that come out of that interp. So yeah, it's a process. I mean, it refines the vision, the scope gets narrower and narrower and narrower with each step. A week ago, my scope was west of the road. We got the geophysical interp in on Friday night, I guess, or Thursday night, whatever it was. And that narrowed my scope even further within, for example, the 6 kilometers of Victoria. We can see what look like the hotter spots. At Lalonde, it widened my scope a little bit because it became evident we're going to work a little bit east of the road at Lalonde because the area of interest is right there. But it deprioritized a lot of ground. Ultimately, it'll all have to be drilled, but it doesn't all have to be drilled at once. So, everything we do goes into the big pot and it gets stirred around, but it refines things going forwards. And then on the other track, we have Dr. Franklin, who, as we generate data, will be working it into his model and doing what he does. But he's data driven, so he needs more data. The way we generate data is by sampling, be it channel sampling, grab sampling, or sampling drill core. We just have to sample and give him the data. So
so constantly adding value. Well, that's the way I see it. You're adding value. You're narrowing the scope. It's an interesting. It's like I've said it from the beginning, Nicole. It's an exciting project that you have, and you have a lot of claims.
yeah, we have a big project.
A
We have
big
a lot of
project.
whatever we have. Whatever we have a lot of it.
Well, on that, Nicole, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for telling us about Minds and Money in London, because it's good to know that the company you're invested in is traveling about. It's not just focused here in Canada, but it's
Don't get
going abroad.
stressed. I'm staying in a motel. It's called Premier Inn. Super cheap. The Hilton. Oh my God. So I saw Investor yesterday, and they were in the
Ooh.
Hilton using a room as their to shoot their video. I'm walking in the Hilton going, seriously? They wanted that much money for this? Like it looks really, really tired. And I guess it used to be the convention hotel, and then Hilton bought it and branded it. But my hotel room per night is 25% of what the convention hotel, and they look the same. In fact, mine's bigger, by the way, and I fly economy. There you go. So
Well,
it's not a lifestyle. I'm not gallivanting.
so we'll let you have dinner, but thank you for brief enough, bringing us up to date. It's interesting to know when we see these recent press releases what's going on, and it's great to know that you're on the road. You're attracting new investors. You're attracting new potential suitors. Again, you're just doing the great work. Can't say anything about it.
Thank you.
Well, I should be saying thank you as an investor because it's no, but it's true. It's true. You want to know that when you're putting your money somewhere, you're investing, that the company, it's these little things that, like you said, flying economy, 25% cheaper hotel. It makes a difference. It really does, because it makes a difference on the money you're raising, and it also makes a difference on the investor, because whether he be participating in private placement or in the market, I mean, that it's good to know that the company is thinking on a wider scope. So we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
thank you,
There
Nicole.
you go.
We'll let you have dinner, and thank you for giving us the time.
Thanks for everyone's time to listen. Appreciate you all. I do appreciate the support.
Thank you for watching, guys. We appreciate you showing up for these videos, following your favorite companies. And again, if you have companies that you want to see on the Invercio platform, reach out to them direct or reach out to us and we'll get in touch with these companies. Again, Invercio.com, the best and only place to find all the content you need on your favorite companies, and at the same time, learn how to invest from the companies themselves. We'll see you next time.